My name is Michael Weisbach. I am a professor at Ohio State. I've taught at lots of universities around the country, but I've been here for 13 years, and I really like it. And one of the things I teach that sort of got me integrated with this group is I focus my research and my teaching on private equity. And so I was fortunate enough to come to a lunch at the Columbus Country Club a few months ago and met Mark, and he asked me to come back. And so I got to join you guys at dinner last night and everything. So that the course I teach is actually on private equity, and our goal is to sort of integrate the idea of private capital markets into our curriculum as a business school, but also to educate the students as to how to integrate. I was so happy when I was at the cocktail party last night, and I actually met the Amy that was discussed here earlier, because she was my student at Ohio State. So we did something right, and now she's working for Jobs Ohio, and so such a bubbly personality. She's going to bring all these people from Asia to set up businesses in Columbus. One of the themes I have in some recent work of mine is that I don't think the world has quite figured out how important private capital markets are. So that one way to look at it is like the 20th century was a century in which the major economic development, one of them was the develop of public capital markets. And the 21st century, I predict, will be the century of private capital markets. Now, right now, there are about $1 trillion raised worldwide every single year for all different sectors of the private capital market. Of course, I didn't bring any numbers with me, but the biggest sector is the buyouts, but real estate and the venture capital is certainly one of them. And one of the amazing things that I always think is that if we think about the most important companies in our economy right now, I mean, they were basically all started in our lifetimes, and really in the last 20 or 30 years. Your Amazons and your Facebook and Google, and they're the companies everyone wants to work for, and they're all brand new, right? If we think about the rest of the world, Japan, they all want to work for Mitsubishi, all these old companies. Where we have in this country, we have all these new companies, and they're really driving the economic growth. And they're also driving regional growth, so that if one of the themes of the previous two speakers was sort of what's going on in Columbus, Ohio, and why is it doing so well. And I can vouch personally that it's been growing. I've been here 13 years, and it's growing like mad. I actually live. I was probably the only one here who walked from his house to this meeting. I live a 10-minute walk up the road on High Street, and so that. And you see there's new restaurants and new businesses, and they're all, they were all mentioned earlier, Root and Olive, and all the companies funded by Rev 1. And so one of the things that I think is key to developing a local economy is actually having private capital money in that economy. And so that the two firms actually that were mentioned by Matt, Drive and Rev 1, they actually feature prominently both in my course, and Mark Kwame comes every year, and Parker McDonald comes every year and tells our students about it, but also in the development of Columbus. And one of the if you look around the country and you look at which cities have done so well over the years, I mean, you got Austin, Texas, and you got Seattle, and you got the Research Triangle in North Carolina. I mean, forget about Silicon Valley, and that's just insane. But it's the companies where it's the cities where all of the venture money is, and where all of the new the new companies are, right? And so that if you have a friend who's trying to buy a house in Seattle, forget it, because you have all of the Amazon people and the Microsoft people, and I mean that's what drives the growth, and that's what's driving the growth here. And so that the one thing I would encourage, if there's any sort of people involved with policy, is that the way to get your city to grow, and certainly the way to get we have Drive Capital and And one of the things that Mark always says when he's in class, what always surprises me, is that what he wants is to have more VC money come in so he can do deals together. You would think that he wouldn't want to have competitors come into your market, but no, no, no. In venture world, you want to have sort of a network of people and having people come in and do deals together and work for each other. And we've made a huge progress here in Columbus. And if you guys, anyone here is involved with this, if the more money can be attracted to firms that are based here and investing in here, I think that's the key to economic growth in this country, in this part of the world. So anyway, I didn't prepare anything, so let me turn it back to Mark. And
but we're going to turn to the VC and innovation panel.
My name is Mike Nemeth. I'm a great case study, frankly, for all the presentations this morning about Jobs Ohio and attracting people to come here to Columbus. I moved here 10 years ago from New York to take a job inside of a nanotech company that was encouraged to relocate here to Ohio. And I was one of their first business employees. So if you can imagine 10 PhDs sitting around in an office waiting for someone to do the business stuff, that's what I was asked to do. So it was a lot of fun, and it was certainly a great example of a company that was strapped for resources and leveraged some great opportunities of some non-dilutive state funding to help grow. I worked there for a few years. We saw a partial exit to an international chemical company. And I've subsequently gone on and worked and own a company in the e-commerce tech space. So I'm happy to kind of share on the other side of innovation and venture. And I'm pleased to be up here with Ernie, who Vlad gave me some good background on. Ernie and I don't know each other, so this will be a fun conversation that we'll have. And I did my very basic LinkedIn stalking of Ernie a few minutes ago, so I do have some good questions for him, but I think we'll be excited to see where the conversation goes. Ernie.
Hey, well, first, thanks for inviting me to participate. Very much look forward to the panel here. And Mike, great to meet you, and looking forward to meeting you, sir. I'm Ernie Knight. I live here in Columbus as well. Been here for about 20 years. Been doing VC investing for that entire time. Prior to that was in Silicon Valley doing primarily product marketing for startups. Earlier in my career I was in the steel industry, which is a longer story I won't bore you with. Today I am the managing director of Valley Growth Ventures. We're a $6 million micro VC fund based, actually, though I live here in Columbus, we're based in Northeast Ohio, specifically Youngstown. The Valley is short for Mahoning Valley. Though we have an emphasis on investing in Northeast Ohio, we do invest across the state. Half of our capital comes through a really limited partner, investor-friendly program for the state of Ohio. Though we have investors from across the country, I like to say from sea to shining sea, all the way from Silicon Valley to New York and Boston and 11 states in between. We have some unique partnerships with Bon Sequoia Mercy Health, the Youngstown Business Incubator, Bright Energy Incubator, Youngstown State University, and a group called Valley Partners, which provides some in-kind support. With that, we look at industries and sectors they have expertise in. Includes healthcare, software and IT, energy, advanced materials and additive manufacturing. We focus on doing deals at the seed stage, which really we define as the cusp of market entry. So anyway, that's a kind of a little high level on me and a high level on Valley Growth Ventures. And like I said, look forward to, to offering some hopefully useful perspectives here at this panel. The Voltage Valley kind of is focused in the Mahoning Valley, primarily kind of the Lordstown, Warren, Youngstown area. Lordstown Motors is a big part of that, and there's a whole ecosystem of electrification and voltage ecosystem that's developed there. we will certainly work closely with those groups, as that is our, our emphasis region, and it's a very exciting time and an opportunity really for significant innovation and a real game changer for the region. But yes, absolutely.
And let's see, what time is it? Good morning still. So my name is Kevin Lloyd. I'm a serial entrepreneur here in the Columbus market, originally from New York City. What I wanted to share specifically is I'm also the co-founder of a company called Color Coded Labs. Color Coded Labs is a boot camp designed to focus on minority communities to help them learn how to code and obviously become engaged in the opportunities that exist in high demand, high tech positions with the goal of increasing their economic stability and generate wealth. The thing that's unique about this is that this company is also co-founded by Mark Kwame. So Mark came up not too long ago in conversation, and one of the things that was mentioned was that he's very interested in the collaboration and investments. And with him coming to Ohio, which he was basically recruited to come here as well and have an impact, he has not only talked about it, but he's actually done that. And I happen to be the recipient of one of those partnerships, as he was able to establish a collaboration between himself, Rev 1, and Jumpstart. Jumpstart is up in Northeast Ohio. I think you probably will hear more about that when you go up to Cleveland. Obviously, Rev 1 is here in Central Ohio. And in collaboration with Mark as well, they decided to invest in Color Coded Labs and gave us our pre-seed in order to really get it off the ground. So Color Coded Labs, we are in the process of our first cohort with 6 members, working on our second cohort already with the goal of obviously filling these positions. Since we launched about 3 months ago, we've had probably 20 plus companies. So a lot of those that were mentioned on the screen during the last presentation from One Columbus, most of those companies have come to the table to hire our candidates. So there's a huge demand, there's a huge partnership, a huge collaboration. So happy to be here today to share a little bit of that story, because it's the reality of what's happening here in Central Ohio.
So we can cover steel and some other background fun. And I'm curious as well for you, the background that led you into Color Code Labs and what brought you here, if we can dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah. Say that again, New York. So born and raised in the city. So I was born and raised in Spanish Harlem. I went to Tuskegee University, received a degree in accounting, spent 25 years as a retail executive working for most of the major retailers, and then stepped into the entrepreneurial world in full speed in 2018. My background that led to Color Coded Labs is I took the entrepreneurial journey. I actually started my first startup in 2005. So I own a couple of different companies. So one of them is the Lloyd's of Columbus, and we own a property called columbusblack.com. So we're the online primary resource connecting the Black community to commerce and culture here in Central Ohio. But we've been used for tourism. We've been used as a recruiting and retention tool by most of the major corporations here in the market as well. That led to a lot of my efforts into technology and innovation, and with some of my partners, as we were taking a look at the ecosystem, we know that there's disparities that exist in technology specifically, and one of our goals was to help close that gap. As we continue to host events here in the market, we realized that there was a demand from a recruiting perspective by a lot of the companies, especially because Columbus is one of the fastest, or has been identified multiple times in the last few years as the #1 startup city, right? And the reason why is because of companies like Cover My Meds. You just heard about Root Insurance that just went public. And there's a number of other companies coming right behind them. So from a startup perspective, the market is growing extremely fast. There's a huge demand and there's a huge gap. So my partners and I, in collaboration with Mark, sitting down having some conversations, recognized that we could help to fill that void, just due to the access to the minority community, the fact that there's a demand there, and we could close that gap. So that's how it led into Color Coded Labs.
Ernie, from a talent perspective, right, where you're at and where your companies are at, I saw most of the companies in your portfolio are mostly health, medical sciences. What's sort of the strategy there on either recruiting talent out of Columbus or developing or building talent right in the hometowns of where your companies are at?
Sure, great question. Certainly from a healthcare perspective, the state broadly greatly benefits from some of the best healthcare resources on the planet. Northeast Ohio, you've got the Cleveland Clinic, you've got one of our investors, Mercy Health Systems, Akron Children's Hospital, also an investor of ours. Right here you have Nationwide Children's Hospital, the Ohio State Hospital System, Riverside, Ohio Health, and in Cincinnati you got a number of great hospital systems too. So really those feed. A number of our companies come from innovations. One of our portfolio companies literally is innovation out of Ohio State based on atrial fibrillation. There's a great ecosystem there, generates a lot of talent and innovation. On the software side, it was mentioned by the gentleman earlier, there's a number of universities here in the Columbus area, but also in Northeast Ohio, where you have Case Western Reserve, Cleveland State. In our backyard, Youngstown State University has a very strong engineering program. So you just have a lot of talent that has been bubbling up, and we've talked about the attraction piece. So mining talent has, I've been here for now 20 years, as I mentioned. It's greatly improved over time. A lot of the factors that have been discussed kind of drive it, but absolutely the talent is there, and the ecosystems just continue to grow.
So I know we're kind of narrowing in on the talent side, but it does ultimately all the innovation and all the growth doesn't happen unless there's people there to get the work done. Despite rise in automation and AI, I think there's still this undercurrent of we need to find smart people. We need to find people to fill roles inside of our companies. The candidates that you have coming through the lab, where are they coming from? What's inspiring them to join? And then, very curious from my own perspective, how do you keep them engaged versus everyone wanting to become an entrepreneur now that that's the sexy title to have, right? Like I see this problem happening a lot is people often are trying to start companies just because they feel like that's the thing they should do versus getting the experience inside of other companies. So what are you teaching the people inside of in your cohort about putting the work, how to understand like how the landscape is before you go off and do your first thing on your own?
So I'll start with the first part of your question, which is where are we sourcing the candidates from? The cool part is when you think about what happened last year with COVID, this whole virtual world gives us a little bit more flexibility, right? So when we initially started the concept, it was going to be face-to-face and in person. Obviously, we had to slow things down because of everything that happened, and then we decided to go hybrid, where it's virtual/in person, which gave us a little bit more flexibility. So out of our 6 candidates, actually one of those candidates is in Florida and is able to participate. But when we do in-person events, like we have an event this evening, she's actually here in town for that event. But otherwise, we still have the ability to teach and train. The rest of the candidates really just came through our network, right? So through promotions and marketing and letting people know about what we were going to do. There are a lot of people interested in different opportunities. They want the opportunity to work for. What we find that's interesting is not just learning tech. It's the opportunity to work for the companies that are willing to hire them from our program. So that's actually very compelling to them to have the opportunity to work for a Root Insurance or a Nationwide or a JP Morgan Chase who's saying we want to hire these particular candidates. So that's a value proposition for them. In regards to their focus around, going through the program and then getting a job and getting the experience before becoming an entrepreneur, it really comes down to, I think, our reinforcement. So what we decided to do was coin this as an HBCU style boot camp. So in essence, we're providing a lot of support and engagement. So every week there's interaction and engagement with these candidates versus the normal online, processes that are there. So for instance, we use Udacity as the curriculum platform. However, we reinforce it with a lot of engagement. So for instance, last night we had a social activity where we went out to Pins and Condados and had a great time with them. That's really important, and then we provide them with soft skills training. So we have experts and mentors that are supporting them with soft skills training so when they do get their jobs, they can be successful. And I think that's helping us to guide them down that path toward the corporate opportunities and the fact that these jobs are waiting versus, hey, just jump out and become an entrepreneur. And if they decide to do that, we'll still be able to support them, but we're trying to get them on track for these opportunities.
Can you talk about the recruiting path that you have on getting companies to start recruiting your candidates? Because that's the two-sided sort of marketplace there that you have to deal with.
Yeah, so this is another part, by the way, where Mark was able to help us out, right? So obviously being a person that he is in the market, we were able to do a survey to see where the demand was before we started the program, so a little research. And we've been able to engage those companies on the front end to validate their interest. And now we continue to engage them, so we brought them up to speed. Tonight, what's going to happen is they'll have an opportunity to meet, there's a select group of those companies that'll have a chance to meet the candidates. So that's how we're already bridging that gap. And one of the things that I learned throughout my entire career in retail is, you can go to a career fair at a college or university, right? But that's after the fact, right? The goal is to have an interaction with the deans of those schools, the professors, so they can handpick and cherry pick the candidates that are fit for your company. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're literally handpicking and identifying these candidates, helping to identify a match and fulfilling those positions. The goal is to continue to do that, but to be able to scale that as well.
Yeah, I'll actually hop right in on the same topic. You were talking about kind of how do we build the ecosystem, how do we get more entrepreneurs, cultivate the next generation. We've taken a little bit of actually a similar tact. I really resonated what you were saying. We have internship programs that we run. We work with about 40 universities around the country, but a real focus on the Midwest. And we run internship programs with a select number of those universities where they kind of get experience working with us in getting both exposure to the investment side. Actually, we think entrepreneurs should get exposure not just to the operating side, but they're going to be good entrepreneurs. They actually need to make sure they know what a cap table is and make sure they don't get taken advantage of by. Not all investors are, so most of us hopefully are good investors, but there's some out there that might take advantage of an entrepreneur. So you want to really give them that exposure in addition to the operating experience. And some of those folks end up joining our team, but the vast majority of them go back off. Some of them stay in academia ultimately, and actually hopefully will spin technologies out of their labs. And many of the others will go on and become entrepreneurs and hopefully help to build the local ecosystems that they're in. And if they have the tools that they need from hopefully, working with an organization, they'll be able to actually stay in their home ecosystem and do more of that rather than sort of having to go off to a big city where there's already a ton of entrepreneurs to kind of get that mentorship. So if we give it to them while they're in school, hopefully they stay local. Sure, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on the topic, but I run a company called Orange Grove Bio, and essentially what our business is a biotech holding company. We work with universities across the country to help those universities spin those technologies, mostly in the therapeutic space, out of the university and build them into new companies. We then actually leverage our team to actually run those companies. So rather than trying to find the one-off entrepreneur to build each one of these businesses, which is the traditional venture model, you bring the money and then hope that there's a good entrepreneur, we actually try to bring the entrepreneurial talent alongside of the capital and get things going. And then obviously over time, as those companies grow, they'll build more and more of their own infrastructure. But in those earliest days, we kind of try to lend them, let's say, a helping hand and provide a lot of the infrastructure they need. And so for us, the more we can get those ecosystems up and running in different parts of the country, these venture ecosystems, the better it is for everybody, right? The more we can find local talent to then fill in those companies, and maybe the less we have to kind of export in from elsewhere.
So perhaps this question's a bit biased from my own background in aerospace and some other larger ecosystems where there's a heavy presence of the government, some sort of state customer, not just state involvement, but from the perspective of helping your companies mature and grow and finding customers outside of just typical B2B, but B2G. Are you seeing that here in Ohio as an advantage, a disadvantage? Kind of talk about the other customers that you guys have, when dealing with government customers, supporting your projects.
Yeah, so government's a very, very big part of our business, right? It comes at really two levels. You have the federal government level where guess what? Most biotech research in this country ultimately comes back to the NIH and other government agencies. And I will say that Ohio stacks up really well, and actually so does a lot of the rest of the Midwest. There's a lot of big research institutions. They are getting billions and billions of dollars from the federal government every year, and it's kind of a little, maybe a very well-known secret that that's where a lot of this innovation is coming from. Additionally, I'll say, I mean, we've made a big bet on Ohio. We've actually moved our headquarters from New York to Cincinnati because the Ohio state government is just so forward-thinking, is putting resources to bear in the biotech sector. And we look at them as a partner. We also look at government agencies ultimately as customers, right? We ultimately can sell products if we develop certain drugs to the Army, to other government agencies. So there's kind of multiple different levels in which we're interacting with government. And so making sure we get that support at both the federal and the state level is so critical. Just looking at kind of the macro landscape, I'll also just throw in there, as we've kind of moved back to a world of kind of onshoring, and especially with kind of strategic industries, being a U.S. focused and based research focused organization really puts it at the forefront of where a lot of both state and federal government energies are going, right? There's really a real push to say, you know, we went through this whole COVID period, and people recognize that actually being able to both innovate new vaccines close to home and then manufacture them close to home is actually a very important strategic advantage and almost necessary. And so I'd say a lot of organizations like ours are sort of net beneficiaries of that kind of shift in policy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I will say that a commercial customer is probably preferable to a government customer. You know, certainly we've had a strong partnership with the state government in particular with our fund, but government customers can be, you know, they can change with administration, they can change with policy. So there's a little, you know, an extra layer of risk that's involved when thinking about government as a venture customer. You like to think, particularly in the B2B space, that you know, customers will be reasonable actors, right? I mean, they're driven by ROI, they're driven by profit, they're driven by whatever it is, and if you provide them a must-have valuable product or service, they're going to want to pay for it. In the case of governments, that is driven often by political factors and other things that are a little add to the risk. That said, particularly at the federal level, if you're able to attract a government contract, it can be very lucrative. That can be hard to obtain. One great example, one of our portfolio companies it's based here in Columbus, founded by a professor in the electrical engineering department called Data Anchor. They have a cybersecurity product that is a very strong fit for what's called CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Compliance that all Department of Defense vendors are going to need to comply with. So, you know, we see a real opportunity there and are really leveraging that into the space. So, you know, when you can find an opportunity, it's great, because once you can get there, it can be really sticky. But there are, you know, added challenges when you're thinking about the government, you know, market and the risk it creates.
Mark, we good for maybe one more question for each panelist? Awesome. Well, I'm going to put you guys on the spot, because I think oftentimes, you know, we try to be completely professional and keep everything, you know. Tell us something that you're happy about, that you want to brag about inside your organization, right? Like just a win, right? Like this year and the 18 months have been tough. We always talk about the problems that we're facing. So let's end on a positive note. Tell everybody just a good win that you're proud of. Hey, this is what we got done. And then to make it really concise and simple for everybody, you know, let everyone know here's how I can help you, and here's perhaps you know, how you guys could maybe help us.
That is a loaded one for sure. Because clearly we've been through a lot in 2020, 2021 has come through roaring. And I'll try to keep it as sweet and short as possible. But as a serial entrepreneur, I have a few of these, right, that's going on. But I'll start with Color Coded Labs. I think what I'm most excited about is all the learnings that we've had in such a short amount of time. The amount of demand and interest in what we're doing is, I mean, at points, it seems overwhelming. It's not as exciting. So that will probably be one of the key victories. So I think we recognize from a local market, or not a local market, but from a product market fit, is 150%, right? The demand is there. And then while there's still some challenges of identifying enough candidates to meet the demand, we've also identified some resources that can help us identify that pipeline and secure that talent as well. So those relationships are coming through. So I'm really excited about that. Outside of that, what I didn't get to share is I also own another company. It's called MILE, which stands for Make Your Life Entertaining. It's an entertainment software and lifestyle data analytics company. And we have launched a platform to help people find things to do, places to go, and food to eat right in the palm of their hand, right? So leveraging machine learning, artificial intelligence, and some of the most recent technology. And we're about to launch that and scale it nationally. So we're right in that point. We just got funded for our pre-seed round, so we're just at that point of really getting ready to scale and get it out there. So that's like super, super exciting for us right now. So I'll invite everybody to go to mile.com. That's myle.com. That's my shameless plug. In regards to, got to do it, right? I'm an entrepreneur. So in regards to what I need and how I can help you all is really that support, right? Whether it's with Color Coded Labs, whether it's downloading Mile, spreading the word, doing our campaign. Those are the simple, easy ways you can help me. The way I can help you all is, I know a lot of you may be interested in this particular market. I'm an ambassador for the city of Columbus, very well connected here, have a lot of relationships. And when it comes to deal flow or opportunities or networks, I can be a resource to help you in any way that you need. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy connecting. And if there's a need here, I'll be willing to help.
Thank you.
So in terms of the proud win, I'm going to start generally and then focus in more specifically, which doesn't mean I'm going to talk long, though. That does set the prelude that I would, doesn't it? When the pandemic started, it was a scramble, and we are very active investors generally, and we got more active. I mean, we got very operational. And if you would have told me, in June of 2020 that, our entire portfolio would survive, I would have not believed you. Well, I'm very happy to say our portfolio has survived. Are all of them, potential unicorns? No, but they're all alive. They're all well positioned and ready to take the next step. We were able to make the adjustments we needed to make. And then specifically, though I've been doing venture capital investing as an institutional VC for some time, Valley Growth Ventures is a first-time fund. And the biggest win for a first-time fund is your first exit. And we had our first exit in March. Investors made money. Did they all go buy yachts based on the returns? No, but they all had a positive return. I can't say how much because it's confidential, but very proud to get that first one in the door, particularly coming out of a pandemic. In terms of how we could be helped, I mean, we're a venture fund, right? So we're always looking for deal flow. Though we are Ohio focused, we do have the ability to invest outside of Ohio. It's not our sweet spot, but we do. But deal flow is always welcome at the seed stage. And we've talked a lot about talent. If entrepreneurs or people that want to be involved in startup businesses and have skills, we'd love to find a way to introduce them to our portfolio companies and the companies that we work with in the Mahoning Valley. How can I be helpful to this group? That's maybe a tougher question, but I'll throw something out there. In my career, I've done venture investing and worked with companies as an entrepreneur, not just in Ohio, but also on both coasts. So I'm probably one of the few people that can really speak directly to the differences between investing on the West Coast, East Coast, or the Midwest. And it is different, right? It's really a different model that you typically think about. You can generate returns that are venturable and risk-adjusted return for the asset class in both cases, but the approach and the model are different. And I'm always happy to speak and give thoughts on what those differences are and the pros and cons to different regions in the venture asset class. So.
Great. So I'll try to keep my comments relatively brief. Sounds like a lot of folks have accomplished a lot in COVID. It's impressive to see. We're a little bit of a different business, right? We actually got ourselves launched right at the eve of COVID. So we immediately had to figure out how to build and grow a business during COVID. And so one of the businesses that I was very excited about, it started out actually as a COVID response, right? It's a company called Aselixa Bio, came out of technology out of University of Michigan. And the idea was actually to develop a therapy that would be able to help with very sick COVID patients. It's actually a platform that has a lot of other disease areas that it can be focused on, including acute respiratory distress, which is where we've sort of moved it into as sort of the COVID crisis has kind of ebbed and flowed. It still potentially has some use there. But I like to think about the fact that we were able to very quickly ramp something up to try to be helpful during that pandemic period. And that's a company that actually was able to pivot a few times and continue to be strong and actually come out even stronger on the other side of COVID today and entering clinical trials pretty soon. In terms of kind of the other big accomplishment I would say is we went from an institution that was only working with a handful of universities at the start of the pandemic to one that's working with over 40 institutions today, and we did that all via Zoom. So as much as I prefer and appreciate the fact that we're all able to be here in person, and a lot of business is better done when you can go face to face, you can accomplish a lot on Zoom calls, and I think the pandemic really taught everybody the ability to do that. In terms of how you can help us, well, we're new to the Ohio ecosystem. We're new to Cincinnati, where we're building our headquarters. We have a lot of hiring needs there now that we're shifting our focus. We're bringing some of our talent from the coasts, but obviously want to find a lot more talent locally. So have a long roster of people I'm looking for. So if folks know of good lawyers, accountants, biotech professionals, we're looking for all of them right now as we scale our team locally. And how I can be helpful to all of you is what we've noticed actually from really conversations with investment groups all around the country. A lot more people are interested in biotech. They don't know, it's a kind of a boogeyman. It's a scary industry if you aren't really deep in it, and so a lot of people have shied away. I think people are starting to inch into it a bit more because returns there have just been so fantastic over the past 7-8 years. Would love to talk to any of you about biotech investing broadly, not even for our business. I mean, great if you want to participate in one of our portfolio companies, but if I can be helpful to get you comfortable to start inching into that industry, it's one that's going to continue growing for many years to come, and would love to just see more investors in that industry in general.
Thanks. So I made Vlad a bet that I could get one question out of this very interactive audience that we've had so far this morning. So now I'm putting you guys on the spot. Put down your phones, take a second. I'm going to look for one volunteer to ask this fine panel an insightful question that's just burning a hole in your mind. Any takers? All right. I won't tell you how much I just got from Vlad. And you're not a plant, right? I didn't plant you. We don't know each other. All right. Let me get out there and get you the mic. I think they need it for audience.
Luke Timpey, just quick question. For the panelists, I know you guys talked about just the pandemic a little bit. Like, what was the toughest situation dealing with the disruption just in that space? Just kind of curious.
Thank you.
All right. So on my end, I think, wow. So each of the endeavors, I would say 3 out of the 4 endeavors that I'm tied to came to a halt, right? So fortunately, the one that didn't, it took off, fortunately, but tied to a co-working space. So guess what? Nobody was coming out to work in an office during COVID. So we literally put the brakes on and couldn't open up for over a year. And this was a newly founded co-working space. With Color-Coded Labs, everything was put on hold as we were trying to shift from in-person to figuring out how to do it virtually. And we finally got that off the ground, but that was put on hold as well. And then with Mile is all about entertainment. Well, everything completely stopped entertainment-wise, and then it went online. So we quickly shifted, but in-person events stopped in most of the country. But we were able to see those trends. So yeah, exactly. So that was the biggest adjustment, was really just being patient. With Mile, we decided to just innovate and do everything we wanted to do. So by the time COVID was done, we would be relevant for what was needed. With Color Coded Labs, we obviously shifted to a hybrid. And then with the co-working space, we had to wait. So it was, but you think about going through the mental shift of how do I pivot or just tweak the model to still be successful and then figure it out. And it was just really unique. The thing about it is that it's still so much ambiguity in what we do today, and you just have to continue to kind of ebb and flow as you need to. So it was a lot of learnings that came from it.
And you're still here.
Well, I guess the unfortunate truth is this is an easy question for me to answer. One of our portfolio companies, Medisync, provides business intelligence and predictive analytics software to nursing homes. So if you recall, right at the beginning of the pandemic, you couldn't get in a nursing home, right? I mean, it was the hotbed of infections, and I mean, literally, it's hard to sell software when you can't go on site, and they're trying to deal with a large amount of death. The pipeline halted. In order to keep them afloat, they did what good entrepreneurs did and do, and they agreed to cut down their salary significantly. We extended payables. We cut, everything we possibly could to extend runway. And they didn't get a new customer for the first, 7 months. Luckily we were able to do some creative things, and now they've generated, 4 new customers, and recently the largest customer in the history of the company. So, they're stabilized, and we're now with each new customer slowly increasing salaries to bring them over time back up to where they were. We gave option grants to the engineering team to keep them aligned and on board, and we've not lost anybody, which is a real testament to the fortitude and the belief that the entire team across the board has. But it's tough, not only when you have a pandemic, but you can't even get into a customer, and they lived every day worrying about a phone call from current customers that they were going to stop paying, right? I mean, that they're going to lose customers through no fault of their own. They just couldn't afford it anymore. But luckily, they haven't lost any customers. They've had some delayed payments here and there, but they were able to keep their customer base. But that was the toughest story for us. We had a software company selling to nursing homes, and not a place you wanted to be for the first several months of COVID, or even now. I mean, I wouldn't recommend anybody invest in that space.
So you would think the biotech industry would be kind of booming during COVID, and certain subsegments of the market certainly did. What I'll tell you is getting drugs approved is a very intensive regulatory process. And when everyone is scrambling and trying to solve a global crisis, that regulatory process starts to break down. The FDA stops being responsive to everybody who is not solving a COVID drug. Cancer is not really important when you're fighting a crisis. And so most things kind of ground to a halt for a good number of months during 2020, and you just couldn't get responses from government agencies. You couldn't get things through. Clinical trials just stopped, right? You couldn't recruit patients because you couldn't make sure that those patients would be safe going into the hospital and getting treatment. And so I'd actually say probably the bigger tragedy of it, not put aside our own portfolio and our own business, is there were a lot of patients out there who were not able to enroll in clinical trials for diseases like cancer, heart disease, et cetera, or even get their treatments because of COVID. And so we talk about the number of COVID deaths, and actually that's far dwarfed by the number of people who died not being able to get other treatments for other diseases because we were so busy fighting this crisis. So it really had a lot of negative knock-on effects for not just for our business, but I think just for humanity. And obviously, I know we're all coming out the other side. I want to end on a bright note that thankfully things are normalizing and the industry is recovering, and a lot more people are going out for treatments. We're seeing hospital people going in for kind of more elective surgery is really picking up, which is a sign that people are getting helped rather than suffering in silence. So.
Mike, I'd like to one of the earlier questions was one of your best wins, and we have a win I want to highlight from a fund manager / entrepreneur.
Thank you, Mark. Barry Adams, Prairie Crest Capital, managing partner. First of all, I've been with Mark since the beginning of 360, and it has grown tremendously, and the family has grown, and I want to thank you all for participating here in Columbus. This is my second time to Columbus, thanks to Vlad. Prairie Crest Capital is more in tune with Orange Grove Bio, and the fact that we really like to commercialize university technologies and deep science and bring them to market. But it's not always that easy. And it's not always that easy because scientists don't necessarily make great business people, as you can attest to. We found a company through our process, and our process is identification first, and then marketability, and then we bring them into a collaborative event where multiple investors can see, poke, feel. We did this conference with Pioneer as our lead sponsor. From there, we identified natural fiber welding. Natural fiber welding at that time still is led by a scientist, but they had no customers. Great technology, no customers. And their three promises to the market was vegan leather, vegan plastic, and the third was a cotton material that was 100% cotton, but had the qualities of polyester. It was out of Bradley University. We met them in 2017, brought them into our conference, and we literally had to coach them into how to bring this company into the marketplace with real customers, real clients, and everything else. The challenge was, because it was vegan leather and vegan plastic, we had one company, JBS as an example, looking at this company as a defensive investment because they had the biggest cattle producing company in the world. And this company, instead of leather, was vegan leather, so that was a defensive kind of investment that we looked at initially for this company. But what we found is that it was not just the angel investors that came to the fore, but it was three strategic partners in each different category. And finding those strategic partners under NDAs was really the challenge. So natural fiber welding, for the vegan leather, our first strategic partner to invest in the company was Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren came in, and we started really small, guys. Ralph Lauren came in for leather patches on their jeans, all right? And then in 2019 at the 360 event, I introduced natural fiber welding to the 360 family. And at that time, Ralph Lauren brought in three Italian purse makers to New York City. And we made purses by hand with vegan leather. And that led to a $5 million investment from Ralph Lauren. So once Ralph Lauren came in, Smart Shirts came in for the 100% cotton. And Smart Shirts is from Southeast Asia, but they make branded shirts. And those branded shirts you would know as Calvin Klein, Kenneth Cole, and others. So we had the cotton material, $4 million investment from Smart Shirts. We got $5 million from Ralph Lauren. And the third one in the original round was Allbirds. Allbirds came in for their all-natural vegan shoes. So we had three categories to start off. At that time, we started getting a lot of demand. And what happened is we had to change our business focus, because in the beginning, we would go with small brands who could make quicker decisions rather than these corporate brands. But once the corporate brands came in, we couldn't afford to do that and maintain our business model. And so we closed the first round at $71 million last August. And we went back to the marketplace in February with a round priced at $200 million. So between August and February, we had a triple. At the $200 million round, we got investors such as BMW for cars. BMW's main interest was when you put leather in cars, you waste approximately 35% of the leather due to the cutting. With vegan leather, you don't waste anything because you make it to specification. So there was a big, huge savings in the car industry. We thought we had a deal with Porsche first, but BMW came in first. So at that $200 million round was February. In July, the banks, which are starting to come into the VC space earlier, came in and valued natural fiber welding between $450 and $500 million. Now, the important part is a couple things. One, commercialization of technology from college universities. Two, bringing those college technical advances to a customer base. Three, protecting the IP so that you have it. And then scalability. So the reason we invested in natural fiber welding was they solved a problem that was big enough. They had the scalability, which is the most important aspect. And we felt we could introduce them to the customers, which they couldn't necessarily do on their own when they started. The things that we look at are, as a firm, are size of problem, people, because in our business, there's a trust factor that has to go both ways, and we don't overlook that. And that part takes time to build. And the third part we look at is, can we have a collaborative investment base of friendly capital? Because there are going to be hiccups. The hiccups with this company, Natural Fiber Welding, is that they were so focused on sustainability and the research and being right that they wasted, 6 months trying to prove to the Gates Foundation that this was the best thing in sliced bread. And they wasted, a whole white paper putting together for breakthrough energy and all that stuff. And we said, guys, let's focus on the customer and everything else will come back to us, right? So we had to make that little tweak in how they approached their business. But I just wanted to share with you one of the 360 wins in the 360 family of natural fiber welding. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Yes, sir. The answer is absolutely. Just the way they could do cotton and think about their cotton products, think about 100% cotton with the qualities of Under Armour. They can do the same thing with hemp, and we've had this discussion. There's a little bit of difference in the touch and feel, but right now we're trying to find that first customer for the hemp piece without losing our acceleration in the marketplace.
Isn't that an awesome story?
Come join our 361 firm community of investors and thought leaders. We have a lot of events created by the community as we collaborate on investments and philanthropic interests. Join us.